we have to start the learning curve, start the process, and then build on it. And that's why I strongly urge that you incorporate language to give to the Chief Executive Officer of this country the authority to move in when he believes that corrections have to be.
And of course, we don't see that in this, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know my time's limited. Vice President Gore.
Congressman. He is one of those small handful of firms in 2004 that was part of the Republican conservative club. Blackwater itself, in particular its CEO and founder, Eric Prince, has long-standing ties to the conservative movement, particularly on the Christian Coalition side, had been very generous with his campaign contributions over the years. He and his family contributed over $2 million to Republican candidates and the Republican Party. Fallujah happens the last day of March. Within 24 or 48 hours after that, they're literally on the Hill meeting with some of the most powerful members of Congress who really were going to dictate what was going to happen to this company in terms of its funding. They went to John Warner, who was the chair of the Armed Services Committee on the Senate side. They went to Duncan Hunter, who was a congressman from San Diego, who was the chair of the Armed Services Committee on the House side. They met with Rick Santorum, who was chair of the Republican Senate Conference Committee, which is a very, very powerful post. They went to Washington. They stopped any investigation from taking place. And at the end of the day, as a result of their action, they were able to protect their business. They went out and they retained former high-ranking government officials, Cofer Black, who was a high-ranking official at the Central Intelligence Agency, Joseph Schmidt, who was the Inspector General at the Pentagon. And undoubtedly, when you go out and you retain high-ranking officials like that, they certainly are helpful in attracting new business, pursuing new business, and getting new contracts. Within a year after the Fallujah incident, they had received over $200 million in new government contracts.
People in Washington who leave government and go to work in lucrative jobs for defense industry, they have connections. They have influence.
What happened in 9/11 is we didn't have a strategy, we didn't have bipartisan agreement, we didn't have American understanding of it, and we had instead a policy coup in this country. A coup. A policy coup. Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I couldn't stay away from Mother Army. I went back there to see Don Rumsfeld. I'd worked for him as a White House fellow in the 1970s. All this is in the book. And I said, am I doing okay on CNN? He said, yeah, fine. He said, I'm thinking about it. He says, I read your book. And he said, this is a book that talks about the Kosovo campaign. And he said, I just want to tell you, he said, nobody's going to tell us where or when we can bomb. Nobody. He said, I'm thinking of calling this a floating coalition. What do you think about that? I said, well, sir, thanks for reading my book. And, he said, thanks, that's all the time I've got. Really. And I went downstairs. I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He said, I said, well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, no. He said, but I guess they don't know what to do about terrorism, and so they think, but they can attack states, and they want to look strong, and so I guess they think if they take down a state, it will intimidate the terrorists. And you know, it's like that old saying, he said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem has to be a nail. Well, I walked out of there pretty upset. And then we attacked Afghanistan. I was pretty happy about that. We should have. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I said, 7 countries in 5 years. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. He was about to show it to me. He said, because I want to talk about it.